The loudest, the biggest, the brashest. New York is its own character in every play.
The bad thing about New York is the pressure. You're always under pressure.
Here are the stories about those plays. It's New York Accent with Damon Amendolara.
Welcome inside New York Accent, everybody, an affiliated production of CBS Sports Radio and WFAN in New York. Our next guest, 355 victories, speaks for itself. 4 consecutive Cy Young Awards, more than 3,000 strikeouts, a WAR of 104.8, which is just insane, and just about 97% of the Hall of Fame vote. He's one of the greatest pitchers ever to do it. He also pitched against the Yankees in 2 World Series and really had a career against the Mets that if it was just the Mets, most pitchers would take just that career. Joining us here on the show today is the great Greg Maddux. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us. You were always known for precision, accuracy, manipulation of the baseball without having to overpower guys, and you grew up as part of a military family. And I'm wondering, did that upbringing on Air Force bases around the military, did that lead to an attention to detail or discipline with the small stuff?
Well, I think what it did for us was everybody in the neighborhood, we were all in the same boat, and we also spent time over in Spain, so we didn't have TV. We were always outside playing sports. My brother and all the other neighborhood kids, it seemed like whatever time of the year it was, we were playing, baseball, basketball, and football. So we didn't spend a lot of time in the house growing up. We were always outside, just playing sports. I think that had more to do with it than anything, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. And a lot of people from that generation, even my generation, I'm slightly younger than you, would say the same thing. That versatility of playing sports, a lot of different sports, instead of just isolating one sport, tends to help you out, be an overall athlete, and help you. And baseball certainly was the track for you. You had a pitching coach named Dick Pohl who said, you don't have to strike anybody out. You just have to get them out.
Yeah,
and I wonder if you ever shrugged your shoulders or raised your eyebrows at guys that just went in there just wanting to strike people out.
Well, I think that's what a lot of the guys try to do now. It's all about preventing contact as opposed to pitching to contact. I was taught to try to keep the ball in front of the outfield, and I think a lot of the pitchers today are taught to make them swing and miss. So, the philosophies change over time, and there are some pitchers around now here that still do kind of pitch to contact, weak contact, obviously. Trust me, I'd rather strike a guy out than get a ground ball. I mean, I'm no different than everybody else, but I realize that, 300-foot opposite field fly ball's an out, an out's an out.
Well, so does that come down to ego, a pitcher's desire to strike somebody out, to overpower the opponent? Because as you just said, I mean, you could throw one pitch and get a guy out with a long fly ball, but it takes 3 pitches to strike a guy out. Is that about ego?
Well, I think it's about stuff, really. I think the better your stuff is, the deeper in counts you're going to go, the more foul balls you're going to get. I know Smoltz used to get mad all the time because if he wanted a complete game, he had to throw 125, 130 pitches. And it seemed like me and Glad were doing it around the 100-pitch mark. So I think, like I mentioned to him 20 years ago, hey, if you want to throw less pitches, you got to throw slower. So when they swing, they hit it fair.
It's funny because in the world that you pitched, the 90s, the 2000s, it's slugging, it's home run shattering records, it's huge sluggers, and of course, the long ball. So you always felt to be built from a different mold, cut from a different cloth, maybe a different era. Did you ever feel like an anomaly in the sport in which you were dominating?
Not really. I just know there were a lot of pitchers that pitched like me. I know when I was first coming up, there was Ora Horsheiser, and I thought our fastballs kind of matched up pretty much the same. So I watched a lot of what he did on the mound, and he kind of did it with movement and location, changing speeds. And Mike Morgan, I don't know if you remember him or not, but we had
Sure.
the same type fastball, and we also learned from the same teacher back in high school as well. So we learned movement was more important than velocity. We learned location and changing speeds was more important than velocity. We were going to throw hard enough to get drafted, but to have success, we were taught, at a very young age. To have success in the big leagues, you're going to have to be able to locate with movement and change speeds.
Life changes for you in 1992. You were a very productive pitcher for the Cubs, but that year you were dominant, 20-11 with a 2.18 ERA. It was mind-blowing at the time, and you become a free agent, and so now there's a free agent frenzy for you. For that moment when you thoroughly kind of came into your own, did you feel like you had advanced a certain step in your career, that 92 season was so good? Did you feel like you were maybe a different pitcher than you were the previous seasons?
Well, I was. I added a cut fastball. I could sink it. I could run it away from the lefties into the righties, but I could never move it to the other side. So I was able to pitch to cut it and sink it, and I think that made a huge difference for me. I think Billy Connors was my pitching coach that taught me the cutter, and it made a huge difference because now I was able to start the ball down the middle and have it end up on both sides of the plate.
It's that offseason where there's a huge decision in your career. Where do you sign? There's a lot of teams that are really interested in you. You do take a trip to Yankee Stadium. You do visit with the Yankees. Tell me about what you remember from that day.
Well, I remember going to New York thinking I was going there to sign a contract. And Gene Michaels, I believe, was the general manager at the time. And Mr. Steinbrenner was suspended from baseball, so I had no contact with him. And I was mostly talking with Gene. And, I found out like years later, the reason I didn't get offered a contract was somebody high up in the organization had some heart problems that night, and they had to put everything on hold. And I ended up going back to Vegas the next morning, and the Braves stepped in the next day. And being from the National League, I wanted to stay in the National League. I wanted to win a World Series. And, we're talking after the 92 season, and the Braves had been to the two previous World Series, and the Yankees weren't quite there yet. They were a couple years away from their dominant run that they took in the mid to late 90s. And, it just matched up well for me at the time to go stay in the National League and go to Atlanta.
It's one of the great what-ifs in baseball history. Of course, the Yankees go on to build the dynasty as well, and the Braves are one of the elite teams in baseball. If you got an offer from the Yankees, do you think you would have signed it?
Well, obviously. I didn't get on a plane from Vegas and go all the way to New York to go see a Broadway show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I was going there to, I was going there for more than just Miss Saigon, things didn't happen. And, it all worked out great, though. No regrets, no what-ifs, none of that stuff. Had 11 great years in Atlanta, met a lot of good people, got a chance to play with, Smoltz and Glav and develop friendships over the years there. And, no regrets. Worked out great.
93, you guys get to the NLCS, but the Phillies knock you off. 94, there is no World Series or postseason. 95, you do get back to the World Series, and you guys win that championship. What is that moment like after all of the years of coming close to finally hang that banner for the Braves and get yourself a World Series?
Well, for me personally, it was a highlight of my career. You do play for rings. You do play to win the World Series. There's a lot of reasons to play this game, but the number one reason is to win a championship, and was fortunate enough to do that. Looking back, could we have won 3 or 4 or 5 like the Yankees did? Absolutely, but we didn't. No regrets. We did win our division. I think, was it 14 straight years in a row? Yep. I was there for 11 of them, and very proud of that accomplishment. But it'd be nice to have a few more rings, but we do have one.
That year is just an eye-popping year for you. You have a 1.63 ERA when the league average is 4.23. That's even more dominant compared to your peers than what Bob Gibson did in 1968. It is one of the great historical pitching seasons of all time in an era where clearly sluggers are doing some chemically enhanced stuff and offense is starting to explode. When you look back at what you did in 95, does it even surprise you?
Well, absolutely. You never really feel like you're going to go on a run like that. But, I just remember going through that year, and it was just sticking to the process, and it really was one pitch at a time, Well, that's simple. Hang on a sec.
No problem.
All right. Sorry about that.
That's okay. The dogs are going crazy, huh?
It's feeding time. I think the wife's in there giving them their food, and they're all fired up. So
Right on. But yeah, you were just saying that you were just in a groove in 95, huh?
yeah, just you're having fun. Things are rolling, and offense always seemed to score enough runs to win. And we had Rafael Furcal and Andrew Jones and all those guys behind us. I mean, we had the best defense in the National League, in both leagues, really. And our pitchers, they made us look a lot better than we actually were some nights.
Well, you're being modest, but that season was just incredible for the Atlanta Braves. You guys would get back to the World Series in 1996, and you have a chance to pitch at Yankee Stadium in Game 6. Now, you guys have your backs up against the wall. Ultimately, the Yankees would clinch their first World Series championship since 1978 that night of the Bronx. What was that experience for you like in Game 6 of that series?
Well, it wasn't very good because we lost, but I mean, it was, I think I remember Joe Girardi had a man on third and one out and hit a big triple. And I think that was kind of the big hit that kind of started the night for the Yankees. I think Charlie Hayes caught a pop up down the third baseline. I think I remember that.
Yep.
But I know as a player, it was pretty special going to New York and pitching in the World Series. Obviously would have loved to have won the game, but it's one of those experiences you can't trade in for anything. It was pretty special to go there and compete in the World Series in Yankee Stadium with all the history in that. And that was before interleague, so we weren't familiar with anything that had to do with the American League or going to Yankee Stadium.
There is the Game 4 turning point of the series where it looks like you guys could go up 3-1. You have a big lead, and then there's the Jim Leyritz home run that lives in lore for the Yankees. Do you think back to that game and feel like you guys let it slip away and that was a chance for you guys to go back to back?
Yeah, that was a big turning point. I think we were up 6-1 or 2 in that game, and they did a lot to catch up before the home run was actually hit. I know. I know Wohlers, I personally thought he threw the right pitch. I think if he gets the slider down, he swings and misses it, So I didn't have a problem with the pitch selection, but it was definitely a big hit. It was a big turning point. And, to win the first 2 in Yankee Stadium and then to get swept after that was kind of tough to swallow.
During this era, you and the Mets are going back and forth in the National League East. And really, you guys are the older brothers. They're the younger brothers. Chipper Jones is just owning them. Your pitching staff in huge spots keeps owning them. And your stats at the end of your career, you had more starts against the Mets than any team. You had the most wins against them than any other team. You had 66 starts against New York, 35 wins. You also had 13 complete games, the most out of any opponent as well. And one of your lowest opposing batting averages, 243. Sounds like you enjoyed playing in the Mets during your Braves tenure, huh?
Yeah, I didn't realize I faced them that many times too. You just brought that up. I knew I faced them a lot because, they were in both divisions when I was in Chicago and then back in Atlanta. So I know I was in New York a lot. And, I just remember a lot my first game in New York in '86. I was on the mound the night they clinched the NL East. And, I think it was my second or third start of my career. And to go there and to pitch in that atmosphere, being 20 years old, I was pretty spooked. I mean, it was a pretty scary night for me that night.
Yeah.
I was definitely intimidated. And, Howard Johnson and Darryl Strawberry and all the guys they had on their team back then, Dwight Gooden and Sid Fernandez and all those guys. I just remember my first taste of New York was not, was not very pleasing. And, the more times you go to New York, it seems like the more you appreciate the city.
Well, it was not a warm and inviting place in '86 because when the Mets clinched that night, the fans come on the field as well. Yeah. Do you remember the fans streaming on the field after that game?
I remember that. I remember everybody jumping on the field and calling us names in the dugout and rubbing it in and all that. And they were picking up turf and all that. I think after that, they started bringing out the police horses, if I'm not mistaken. They would put the police horses on the field to try to control it a little bit. So, but it was pretty cool. It was something cool to see.
In '99, you guys face off against the Mets in the NLCS, and it's the Mets' chance to finally knock you guys off and dethrone you. And unfortunately for Mets fans, you guys get through them again in 99, but not before the Robin Ventura Grand Slam single. And this is a game that you also pitch in. And it's a wild game. It goes 15 innings. And ultimately, there's the Grand Slam single. It's a bizarre night. It's a great night. You guys end up winning the NLCS. But do you have memories of that night at Shea Stadium?
I do. Was it raining too? Why do I think it was raining that night?
It was kind of a light rain, and you went 7 innings and only gave up 2 runs in that game.
Yeah, I think they tied it up late, and we kept going extra innings, and it was a long night. And I do remember the walk-off single, or whatever you want to call it. But I remember we came back and got him the next day, so all was good.
Yep, you guys clinched it in Game 6. Okay, so we get to 99 of the 99 World Series. You're back up against the Yankees. And in game number 1, you start in Atlanta, Turner Field. You are dominant through the first 7 innings. You have a 1-0 lead into the top of the 8th. And then that Yankees team always just had those small ball innings that could crack the opponent. They were so good at this. Single, walk, sack, bunt, Jeter single. Suddenly it's 1-1. And that's your day is over, your start is over, and ultimately the Yankees win that game 4-1. It must have just been so hard when you face a lineup like that, and they're just all so disciplined and had so much experience. What do you remember about that 99 Game 1 start?
Well, geez, that's a tough one. Was it El Duque?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah,
I just remember the pitching was really good, and I remember. What's weird is I remember. Ball actually rose, and I've never stood in there and actually saw a ball rise before. And I remember that really stood out for me because that was something I never saw before, trying to hit off him. And, I just remember it was a tough game, and we came up a little short.
Must have been a bummer considering you guys faced him twice in the World Series and couldn't get past him. Does that still sting looking back at it?
I mean, it sucks to get swept in 4 games, obviously, but, you look back and you kind of hate to take the loser's attitude that, at least we made it to the World Series. I'd rather go to the World Series and lose than not go. But that's kind of what you say when you get swept. And obviously would have liked to have played better that week, but we didn't.
That year, you film an iconic commercial for Nike with your buddy Tom Glavine, where you guys are working out of the gym and you're taking cuts of the batting cage, and 2 of the best pitchers of the game say, "Chicks dig the long ball." How often does somebody come up to you and say, "Chicks dig the long ball"?
Well, yeah, it's kind of funny. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, I heard it.
Really?
So, it's amazing. You could. You can win a couple Cy Youngs, win a World Series title, but as soon as you do that one commercial, now all of a sudden you're famous. So, it was weird. The day I think I signed about 20 T-shirts the other day that said "Chicks dig the long ball."
It's unbelievable. Nearly 25 years later, and that's what everybody wants to remember. You got to be like, I won 350 games, guys.
Yeah.
So. Let me just ask you as an overview of your career, which hitter did you face that gave you the most difficulty? What was the guy that you said, boy, this guy, for some reason, I always struggle against him?
Well, I think you can pick a team. There's always 1 or 2 guys on every team. But, for me personally, I thought Tony Gwynn was probably the best hitter over time that I faced. And Barry Bonds was probably the most respected. Those were 2 guys that if the situation came up and you couldn't walk them, that's where you didn't want to be. And, Piazza was a very good hitter. I thought Sheffield was really good. Bagwell, very good. Vladimir Guerrero later on, I thought he was tough out. It's just the list can go on and on and on. I mean, if you think long enough, but there's always seemed to be 1 or 2 guys on every team that, you got to try to get 27 outs. And there's these 2 guys you don't really want to try to pick on too much.
Do you ever think about if you would have pitched in a non-steroid era, what your career would have looked like?
Not really. I mean, it was only for a couple years anyway, and, I thought I gave up a few steroid homers, but so did everybody else. It was kind of a level playing field. Everybody else was facing the same guys. So, I didn't really feel like it was that big a deal, to be honest with you. I think, it was what it was. And, if you throw the ball where you want to, they're probably not going to hit it.
Did you enjoy that putting green inside Turner Field?
I did enjoy the putting green. We had a lot of fun with that. And I don't know if you know the story behind that or not, but they were doing Turner Field, and they had a room that they had no use for. And jokingly, Smoltzy said, "You should put in a putting green." And Sherholt said, "Win the World Series this year, and we'll put one in there." And that was in '95. And we won the World Series. And next year we opened up Turner Field, and we had a putting green in there.
Is that one of those things where you clinch the World Series, you're dumping champagne on each other, and then eventually somebody goes, "Yeah, now we got that putting green"? Or do you show up in spring training in '96 or right before the season begins, and you see the putting green and go, "Oh, that's right, they promised us this"?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter.
Okay.
We walked into the new clubhouse checking it out, and then we saw the putting green, and it had a nice picture on the wall of 12 at Augusta, the short par 3 with the flowers in the background and everything. So it was pretty cool.
How particular were you guys of inviting a fourth into your round of 18? You guys were all amazing golfers. I can't imagine anybody that just was a hacker was invited into your foursome.
Well, I mean, we played with however many we had. I mean, a lot of it, Smoltzy always had the tee time, obviously. So, if I was pitching, I didn't play. If Glad was pitching, he didn't play. Avery and Merker were in there. The trainers were in there. Traveling secretary was in there on occasion. So it just kind of whatever was available and whatever, however many spots were available and whoever was available, it always seemed to work out that way.
Do you have a hole-in-one in your career?
I have 6.
6 of them. Wow.
I have 6, and it's been a while.
That should be on your baseball reference page.
My brother just made his 10th in spring training this year.
Is that right? Oh,
yeah,
my goodness.
So,
10 aces.
So we like to brag and say, yeah, we got 16 hole-in-ones in the family and 1 World Series ring.
Have you ever gotten to play Augusta?
I've been lucky enough to play it a couple times.
Wow. That must be amazing, huh?
Really is.
Yeah.
Special day. Great experience.
Well, you are a part of the Invited Celebrity Classic coming up on April the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd from Las Colinas Country Club in Irving, Texas, where there's going to be PGA Tour champs, Hall of Fame athletes, entertainment stars as well, guys from all different walks of life and all different sports. It's going to be on Golf Channel all 3 days, and also tickets are free for fans, which is so cool. You can go to invitedcelebrityclassic.com. This is a great event. We've had a couple of the guys on the show that have been part of this event before, and they always love it. Do you enjoy it?
Oh, it's a blast. It's fantasy golf for me. I mean, these are the guys I grew up watching play golf. So, last year I got a chance to play with Corey Pavin and Duffy Waldorf and Scott Perrell, who ended up winning the tournament last year. So, for me, it's a lot of fun. And, you're teeing off on one hole and right behind you is John Daly. It's pretty cool. So, I mean, I've always been a golf junkie and always admired what those guys can do on the course, and to actually go out and watch them, make a living and be inside the ropes with those guys is pretty cool.
Have you ever thought about maybe 5 or 6 Diet Cokes and a carton of cigarettes like John Daly does? Because it seems to help him out.
Yeah, it could work. Man, calm my nerves down, maybe. Who knows?
But it is cool because it's Ernie Els, Retief Goosen, Bernard Langer. There's so many big-time champions, and then there's all athletes from your era and other eras as well. It's got to be a pretty cool bonding experience with just the whole vibe of the event.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I'll tell you where it's cool is in the clubhouse. When you're sitting in the clubhouse and you get a chance to talk to the football players and the basketball players and all that stuff. It's pretty cool.
Tickets are free for fans to go. This is such a cool thing. InvitedCelebrityClassic.com. The vibe out there is always great. It's at Las Colinas Country Club in Irving, Texas, coming up April the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. If you can't get there, all 3 days are on the Golf Channel. Greg, you've been more than generous with your time today. Thank you so much. Hit them straight, and I really appreciate the time that you spent with us this afternoon.
All right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Well, thanks for watching New York Accent, everybody. Appreciate it. You can always subscribe to the channel right here for more videos just like this and give it a thumbs up. You can watch all of the episodes of New York Accent by checking out our playlists, and let us know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to follow New York Accent on all of your social media accounts. Links are in the description. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next New York Accent.